made was that Israel deliberately, let me repeat that again, deliberately killed civilians in Gaza. I was no longer in government, but when I was invited by an American university to debate Goldstone, the highest levels of the Israel Defense Forces provided me with all the material I needed to show how the core conclusions of the famous Goldstone report were baseless. How could Israel have a policy of deliberately killing civilians when it implemented the exact opposite policy of protecting them by issuing repeated warnings in Arabic to civilians that Israel was about to take imminent action? Beside leaflets, an Arabic-speaking IDF unit telephoned the homes where it was known that Hamas rockets had been stored. Israeli drones monitored if the target had been evacuated. If not, a special non-lethal munition was dropped. It was called a knock on the roof to convince those inside that this was serious. And only then was the target destroyed. Tell me, we're standing in front of the UN in Geneva. Who else does this? Who else issues these warnings in combat? Name another member of the United Nations. The Human Rights Council should be ashamed of itself for accusing Israel. The report of Justice Goldstone never addressed this. You know what happened? Goldstone subsequently retracted his most damning accusation in an opinion piece in the Washington Post. But the damage had been already done. The UN Human Rights Council already had voted to endorse the conclusions of the Goldstone report, although in typical UN fashion, its resolution only condemned Israel and did not even mention Hamas. Musa Abu Marzouk, the Hamas leader, quipped on Al Arabiya television network that Hamas had been acquitted by the UN. Can you believe that? The UN had given Hamas essentially a green light to continue their rocket attacks on Israel. There is a straight line from UN actions back then and last week's launch by Hamas of an Iranian Fajr missile toward Tel Aviv. Ultimately, however, Israel's position was vindicated, not by the UN, but by the United States through the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, who in 2014 countered the impression the UN had given by saying, and I quote, "I actually do think that Israel went through extraordinary lengths to limit collateral damage and civilian casualties," unquote.